This lesson is to help you do a quick review of factoring. It's known by a couple names like X factor. Some teachers call it Big Mac. Okay, so there's 4 examples we're going to go through. Just a quick review. What is a quadratic? Quadratic looks like this expression here. The highest exponent is a 2. If it doesn't have a highest exponent of 2, it's not a quadratic. Setting up the X factor, call it the X factor because we can start by drawing an X, and you'll see that in a second. This is the add number, multiply number. We're going to write our B coefficient here. We're going to multiply A times C, goes here. Underneath the fraction of the denominator, we're going to write an A. Okay, so the first two we're going to start out with where there's no common monomial. Okay, common monomial is like a GCF, your greatest common factor. So there's none of that in these two problems. Okay, so let's get going. Let's scroll down a little bit. Okay, so if we have 5x squared minus 17x plus 6. So I'm going to begin by identifying what is my A, my B, and my C. And you have to be careful. This is my A. Negative 17 is going to be my B. Positive 6 is going to be my C. A lot of students will miss that negative. So this is my A, B, and C. We're going to draw an X. I'm going to put a little reminder, so that's my add number, my multiply number, my 2 fraction bars, and we're going to set it up. So the B goes up here, multiply 8 times C, 5 times 6 is 30. In the denominator, I'm going to put my A. In this case, it's 5. Now comes the guessing part. We're going to look for 2 numbers that multiply to be 30. But those same 2 numbers have to add to be negative 17. So you go through a series of guesses. This is pretty much your only guess part. Okay, so one strategy is to actually write out the factors of 30. 1 times 30, 2 times 15, and some of you guys may see that, oh, that's it. I'm going to write down another one. 3 times 10, 5 times 6. Those are all my factors of 30. You're going to look for one, and we might have to play around with the signs. That's going to give me negative 17. And if I do go ahead and put negative here and here, that's the pair that I'm looking for. Negative 2, negative 15. It can go in either spot. Now you have to look and see, can I reduce this fraction? No. Negative 2/5 is negative 2/5. Negative 15 over 5 is the same as negative 3. So this indirectly helps you with your fraction skills. And then we're ready to write our factors. So the factors of this quadratic, you're going to read the bottom number as your coefficient of your x or n or whatever variable, plus or minus the numerator. So in other words, 5x minus 2. If it just reduced to an integer, then it just becomes x minus 3. Okay? And that's our answer. That's factoring. Let's try the next one. Again, there's no common GCF, no common monomial. Identify your A, B, and C. So I'm going to use a highlighter. So my A, my B, include the signs, and my C. My A, B, and C. Set up the X plus times my fraction bars. Let's see, B is 20. A times C, that's negative 21. The 3 is going to go underneath. And then again, this is pretty much your only guessing part, looking for what 2 numbers multiply to be negative 21. So think of all your factors of 21 that may add up to 20. And so the only pair would be 1 and 21, but one of these has to be a negative. I want this answer to be a positive, so I know this one's going to be a negative. And then you look, can you reduce? Well, negative 1/3 cannot reduce. 21/3, however, is the same thing as 7. And that's it. You just have to write your factors. Keep in mind that this denominator is a coefficient of your x or your whatever variable. So this factor gives us 3x minus 1 and then x plus 7. Okay, let's try a couple more where there is a common monomial so you can see the difference. Okay, here's a couple where we have to pull out a common monomial, and you'll see when we write our final answer we have to include that because that's one of our factors. So we have 8t squared, 38t minus 10. On these two, it's going to be an integer. Sometimes you'll have an integer and a variable. So think of what's the biggest number that goes into 8, 38, and negative 10, and that would be 2. So I'm going to take everybody and divide by 2, which means I'm factoring out a 2. So this is also factoring. I'm left with 4t squared plus 19t minus 5. And then you're going to use the x factor on this part right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to draw my x out. Let's see, this is plus number times number, fraction bar, fraction bar. The b is 19. A times c is negative 20. A is 4. So that's your setup. You always start that way. And then you just start guessing, okay, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 20, but add up to be 19. So again, my numbers would be, let's see, 1 and 20. One of these has to be a negative, and I got to get 19. Let's see, be that one. And then I see if I can reduce. Negative 1/4 does not reduce. However, 20 over 4 reduces to 5. And then I write my factors, keeping in mind to include this guy. So it'd be 2 times 4t minus 1 and t plus 5. And that would be your complete factorization for this quadratic. Try our last one. You notice in a second I'm going to take out a common factor, and hopefully you were all thinking 3, but not just a 3. We want to pull out a negative. We like to have our coefficient of our quadratic term, the squared term, to be positive. So I'm going to take out a negative, and let's see what we have. So I'm pulling out or factoring out a negative 3. Let's see, 3 goes into 36 12 times. Positive divided by negative is negative. That's 16. And let's see, negative is a positive, and that's 5. Okay, and then we go through and use our x factor. Okay, and I'm going to draw my x plus times, fill in all the numbers first, negative 16. No particular order, whatever order you feel is going to work best for you. 12 times 5 is 60, so this also helps with your multiplication skills, your division skills. It's a lot of little hidden gems in here. Let's see, 12 is my a, so it's going to go in the denominator, and then it becomes a guessing game. So this would be 10 and 6. However, I want them to be both negative. In this case, they both reduce. I'll do this one first. That's the easier one. This one, you got to think, okay, if I got to reduce, what's the biggest factor in both? 2. So that's negative 5 over 6. Again, don't forget this guy here. So when you're writing your complete factorization, you have to include that negative 3. This one will tell me, remember, you're putting the variable on the bottom, put it here. So it's 6n minus 5 and 2n minus 1. And that's your complete factorization. So that was a quick review of factoring using this method called the x factor.